After years of waiting, The Batman has finally dropped in theaters. So today we're going to stop and rank all 14 theatrically released Batman movies from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Batman movies. One more thing before we get started. This video is brought to you by Sneak Energy. So I've got 3 kids under the age of 10 and I put out videos basically every single day. So I'm always looking for new ways to stay high energy and focused. Enter Sneak Energy. Just mix 1 scoop or single serve packet with 300 milliliters of water and you get 150 milligrams of caffeine and a mix of energy boosting vitamins and minerals. None of the junk, no sugar rush, no jittery hands, no weird itchy nose, just clean energy. They've got 11 great tasting flavors. My favorite thus far is the blue raspberry. They ship worldwide and have distribution facilities in the US, UK, and EU, so they have the fastest shipping possible. 1 tub costs $40 and contains 40 servings. That's less than half the cost of a canned energy drink at my local grocery store. And if you buy a tub, you can get a metal or plastic shaker for 50% off. Or you can get a starter pack with 9 single serve packets and a plastic shaker for $24.30 so you can figure out which is your favorite flavor. Head on over to sneakenergy.com for a healthier, great tasting alternative to sugar-filled canned energy drinks. And let's get started. In last place, Josstice League. When this movie first came out, I thought it was okay. I appreciated that we got to see the Justice League finally in live action on the big screen, but it felt like it was directed by a committee, processed to death, and had some of the most obvious reshoots of all time. Whether you're talking about Ben Affleck's weight shifting by about 20 pounds, scene to scene, or of course, the mustache removal. But over the last 4 years, it's become incredibly clear that this was a cynical attempt to try and convert Zack Snyder's vision into something entirely different. And the grossest part about it is that they used the death of his daughter as an opportunity to take the movie from him.
Not impressed.
At face value, Joss Whedon's style is absolutely not compatible with Zack Snyder's visually, storytelling-wise, sense of humor, none of it. They are on totally different pages. Beyond that, they took what was supposed to be a 4-hour movie and reshot an hour of it and then dictated the runtime be under 2 hours. It's a really bad sign when the credited director has never even seen the movie. All of the cast have publicly dissed this version of the film, and no one has come to the defense of the producers and director that actually finished this version of the film.
You've made a huge mistake.
When I look at this movie now, I just see a gross abomination. Number 13, Batman and Robin. Now this is an interesting one because it is one of the most mocked comic book movies of all time. But if you look at the talent in front of and behind the camera, there is a lot of world-class talent there. Joel Schumacher has made some great films. The screenwriter has won Oscars. There's plenty of great talent on display in all the lead roles in this film. They delivered the movie that they wanted to make. They just happened to make a movie that nobody else wanted. After Batman Forever was a hit, they learned all the wrong lessons and decided to crank the camp sliders up to 11 and just went for it. So you get a bunch of bat jokes.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
You get cartoonish, unforgivable versions of characters. And you get one of the punniest movies of all time.
I want us to be together, but I want to make sure you're serious about turning over a new leaf.
Hey, freeze. The heat is on.
Let's take some ice.
Every single thing about this movie was a total misfire, and it's even difficult to know what they were aiming for because certain sequences are so cartoonish they could only be intended for children.
Louder, come on, sing!
And then the movie is also filled with close-up shots of butts, crotches, and boobs that aren't really appropriate for children. And the cast has openly admitted that as they were making this movie, they were trying to sell toys.
First movie, things felt much sharper. The second one, I felt like I was making a toy commercial.
The merchandising and licensing became a very, very important part of the making of the film. And I went along with it.
In the end, they made one of the most misguided blockbusters of all time and have spent the last 25 years apologizing for making this film.
Didn't you apologize to the crowd at Comic-Con for Batman and Robin?
I always apologize for Batman.
If I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
Next up, Batman 66, a theatrically released extension of the 1960s Batman TV series. After the first season was a hit, they decided that they wanted to make a movie, sent off a screenwriter, gave him 10 days to write a script. They shot it in about 30 days and released it just a couple of months after that. And for what it is, it's enjoyable enough. But if you compare it to our modern understanding of blockbusters, it feels very mundane and superficial. Absolutely, there's a lot of fun with just how hokey elements of it can be. There's some genuinely funny moments where Batman's trying to get rid of a bomb.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
The riddles in it are so ridiculous, they have to put a smile on your face.
What weighs 6 ounces sits in a tree and is very dangerous. A sparrow with a machine gun.
But it's also a movie that just on a storytelling level, you don't care about the plot at all. There's not character arcs here. There's not character development. So this is a movie that feels like, depending on how much you like campiness or if you grew up with the TV series, you can probably have some fun with this. But compared to modern day Batman films or understanding the character, this is a very strange relic of a bygone era. Number 11, Batman Forever. Joel Schumacher's first adventure with the Caped Crusader is significantly better than Batman and Robin, but it was still a pretty misguided direction to take things. Right off the bat, you have Alfred asking Batman if he can get him some sandwiches.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through.
That sets the tone for what this Dark Knight is going to be like in this film. Now, there are some elements about this movie that I think are better than the Tim Burton films, whereas this movie focuses much more on Bruce Wayne and Batman than Tim Burton's films, but it's also a movie that feels like it got significantly hurt in the editing process. There's rumors that there's a significantly longer version of this film out there that was nearly 3 hours long, and so it just sets up some plot points that could cut out. It's also just some really odd choices, where Chase Meridian should be this strong assistant to Batman helping him with the investigation. Instead, she's a horn dog acting like a teenage girl that has a hots for a superhero.
What is it about the wrong kind of man? In grade school, it was guys with earrings. Now, black rubber.
For the Riddler, they didn't have Jim Carrey try and act like the Riddler. They converted the Riddler into Jim Carrey, so he's just doing his full-blown shtick.
Sucking up your IQ. Vacuuming the cortex. Feeding off your brain.
Like he's hopped up on Jolt Cola. So all in all, a movie that has some elements that are fun, some elements that are improvements over the Tim Burton films, but largely a misguided direction to take things. In fact, Joel Schumacher had so many bad ideas that Batman the Animated Series openly and directly mocked him in an episode.
I love Batman. All those muscles, the tight rubber armor, and that flashy car. I heard it can drive up walls.
Yeah, sure, Joel.
Bringing us into the top 10, Batman Returns, a movie that I think works a lot better as a Tim Burton exploration of 3 lonely, isolated weirdos rather than as a Batman story. Clearly, Tim Burton had very clear ideas for each of these characters, and his ideas weren't all that compatible with what's in the actual source material. So he converts Penguin into a literal penguin man, has Catwoman die and be brought back to life by cats.
Wow, that was weird.
And once again, Bruce Wayne is much more Tim Burton type character than the character of the comics. There are some really nice themes in here and sort of ideas being explored, but it's also a Batman movie that's not very interested in Batman. He's in the opening sequence, and then he disappears for like 20, 25 minutes because Tim Burton seems much more interested in exploring his villains than giving his main character a character arc. It's also a film that feels like the studio got cold feet about having a third act about Penguin trying to kill a bunch of children.
That escalated quickly.
And so it introduces that as an idea, immediately resolves it, and then sets up a new idea about penguins shooting rockets at the city. So a movie that was a huge part of my childhood. I remember when it came out and going opening weekend to go see it. But a movie that, for me, hasn't aged all that well with me, unfortunately. Number 9, Batman 1989. And much like Batman Returns, this movie was a huge part of my childhood. It's one of the first movies I remember going to go see in the theater. I started buying all the collectibles for it, and I still have them to this day. Then I bought the VHS tape when it came out and watched it on loop, and can still quote through all of the commercials at the beginning of the VHS tape.
Yes, we seem to be down to our last Diet Coke. A gentleman is on his way to pick some up.
And it's a movie that I think has a bunch of excellent elements about it. The production design is still unique over 30 years later. I think this is one of the best superhero scores of all time. I think Jack Nicholson gives a great classic version of the Joker.
You ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? What?
And I don't think the story and the storytelling here have aged very well at all, unfortunately. Much like Batman Returns, the movie doesn't seem very interested in Batman. He's in the opening sequence, and then he disappears for 25 minutes. Then once you get into the middle act, once Joker falls into the chemicals, it feels like we're only seeing half of everything. The scenes don't directly transition one into the other. They don't explore ideas. It's just kind of like giving these little glimpses of what Joker's up to, what Batman's up to, what Vicky's up to. And then we're at a museum and we play out this big long sequence. But it was just very strange storytelling that was choppy. So this is a movie that was extraordinarily important to me when I was growing up. So much of even why I do what I do today is because of this movie. But at the same time, no matter how important it was, I don't think it holds up all that well when I rewatch it. Number 8, The Dark Knight Rises, Christopher Nolan's epic conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy. And I don't think it's as good as it wants to be, or as good as I want it to be.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Now, on the positive side, I think that this version of Catwoman and Bane fit nicely into the universe that Christopher Nolan created.
Of course.
At times, it can be very emotionally resonant, especially as you get into the final few moments of the film. And I can respect that Christopher Nolan was trying to tell a big, sweeping, epic story. But in order to tell that big, sweeping, epic story, he had to cut corners in the screenwriting, and Christopher Nolan is normally known for having very tightly written scripts, and this movie makes all the mistakes that he's known for not making. It just feels a little bit like Nolan knew he needed to close things out with a bang, but his interest had waned just enough that he didn't want to do the hard work and spend the time to really iron out all the kinks in the script. And so you just have a film that has plot holes in it, lapses in logic, conveniences, master plans that are so overly ridiculously complicated that they can never actually come together. And unfortunately, that just pulls me out of the movie when I watch it. I respect so much about it, but I don't think it is a great film. It's a good film. It's not a great film. Number 7, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. This is a ranking of the Ultimate Edition because I don't watch the theatrical version, so I don't know where it would fall on this list. Now, Batman v Superman is one of the most polarizing comic book movies of all time, where some people view it as this ambitious but flawed version of these characters that explores broken heroes, and other people just see a bleak, depressing deconstruction of superheroes that lacks any sense of fun. I tend to be in the category that views it as ambitious but flawed. I appreciate the fact that Zack Snyder wanted to explore a bunch of big ideas and play out the idea that actions have consequences, so what happened in Man of Steel would set in motion a series of other events that you see in this film where Lex Luthor wants to take advantage of what happened and Batman is kind of driven crazy by the destruction and he views Superman as a threat that he must stop. Now, certainly, there's too much in there. It's an overcrowded film. But at the end of the day, flaws and all, I like the movie that Zack Snyder delivered.
You have a problem with that?
He has a certain visual flair that he brings to things. He's able to bring action sequences to life. And so a movie that I can understand why a lot of people really don't like this film, I've always enjoyed it. Next up, the Lego Batman movie, the spin-off of the Lego movie that turns out to actually be a really good exploration of the Batman. Certainly, it falls neatly in line with the Lego continuity, with all sorts of crossovers with whatever property Lego and Warner Brothers were able to get a hold of. But at its core, it's telling an actual story about Bruce Wayne and diving into his psychology and the way that he relates to other people.
There you are.
With this mission that he's on and how he uses them and keeps everyone at a distance, in which case, while it is really funny, while it is a Lego movie, while Voldemort does appear in this film, it also understands Bruce Wayne and is poking fun at him, and just an interesting way to tell a Batman story that is wildly unlike any other Batman film, and one that makes it so you can make a Batman comedy while still exploring who Bruce Wayne is. Now, also at the same time, this one is a little bit too chaotic for me, especially in the action sequences and in the third act, where it just gets so hyperactive that my old brain can't handle quite all of it, but always a really nice little film that can be really funny and actually has something to say about Batman. In fifth place, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, a theatrically released adaptation of Batman the Animated Series. And for my money, Batman the Animated Series is the best version of Batman we've ever seen in live action or animation. And I think it's the best animated TV show of all time.
I like it a lot.
Thus, naturally, when they gave us a theatrically released film, I went to go see it opening weekend with my sister, and I've loved this movie ever since and think it's a great Batman movie. A big part of what makes it so cool is that it tells a story about a new Batman villain. It's not just pulling from the rogues gallery. They invent this new character, the Phantasm, and then they tie it into Batman's origin story. So you get a little bit of Batman Year One in the mix with a love story and a new villain, all of it just making for something different. It's not just the same characters over and over again. It's a great version of seeing Batman become Batman and the little things along the way that shaped who he was. And all of this is taking place in a lived-in Gotham. So the Joker does make appearance. You do have other characters showing up in the story, but the main focus is on the mission of the Phantasm and Batman's attempt to discover who it is. So when you take the best version of the character, give him an origin story, give him a love story and a new villain, you get a great, fresh Batman film. In fourth place, The Batman. Here, Matt Reeves delivered the Batman detective story in live action form that I've been waiting for a very long time. As much as I've thoroughly enjoyed or loved a bunch of the Batman films that we've received, we've never gotten a proper detective story.
This is about a king. And Ritter's the match.
And that is exactly what Matt Reeves gave us. It's clearly heavily inspired by the works of David Fincher, especially Zodiac and Seven, where you see the Batman working with Jim Gordon to track down a serial killer. I love the fact that Gotham is this lived-in city where everyone has a rich history and a backstory. Love the fact that Batman is this vicious, angry vigilante still trying to figure out how to do all of this right.
I'm vengeance.
So much of this movie I absolutely loved, and it's not quite as good as I hoped that it would be. It feels like the movie crescendos a little bit too soon, and then it keeps on going for 40 more minutes. It answers all of the questions of the mystery of the plot, and then tacks on a third act. So it just has a very awkward structure to it. It's so a movie that's not quite the instant classic that I'd hoped for, but it is the Batman movie that I've been waiting for a very long time, and I think it complements the other great Batman films really well. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Batman movies. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, I've done a ton of other content like this, and I will be updating all of my Batman rankings over the next couple of weeks. Over the last few weeks, I've reviewed all of the Batman movies I hadn't previously reviewed. You can check out my playlists for all of those things right up here. It begins. Batman is one of my 2 favorite comic book characters of all time. I love origin stories, and Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors of all time. When you put all of those things together, you get a movie that I absolutely love that is totally one of my favorite comic book movies of all time.
That's great!
The first 90 minutes of this film is some of the best origin story material we've ever seen on film, where you see Bruce Wayne go through his hero's journey and transform into Batman. He gets the skills, he gets the allies, he has a vision, a mission, and he goes for it. It's also a movie that is just incredibly well cast, whether that's grabbing Christian Bale, who was kind of an indie darling up to that point in time and just got propelled to the A-list by taking this role, or a ton of fantastic legacy actors filling out all of the side roles. Just an incredible ensemble in this film. Now, I think it loses a little bit of steam once he becomes Batman, goes on his first mission. Then it has to kind of like transition a little bit to set up the final battle in the film. And maybe that could have been done a little bit better. Minor squabble for a fantastic film. Our runner-up, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Honestly, I never thought that we would see a complete version of this film. I thought 15 years from now, we'd see something released. But through the way the universe played out and through the internet rallying, they actually gave him the money to complete his film. And also, I never imagined it would actually be this good.
I don't care how many demons he's fought and how many hells. He's never fought us. Not us united.
Because we'd seen Josstice League, we knew the outline and the major beats that it would hit all along the way. But what we didn't realize was that every single change that they made the movie worse. Zack Snyder had made this epic film that took its time to slowly set up its plot points and characters, so that all along the way you understood what they were doing and why, felt the tension in each sequence, and then as you move into the back half, everything pays off so well. And Justice League pulled all these great things out, took this amazing epic sequence where the Flash runs through time to stop an explosion that'll destroy the Earth, and replaces it with the Flash pushes a car, and then he's the punchline to a joke. For me, this is one of the great comic book movies of all time, and it's one that's made for adults. It's mature while having all of the epic stuff and exciting action that I want from a comic book movie. But coming in first place is The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's follow-up to Batman Begins picks up right where that film left off and just builds off that fantastic foundation. Since the origin story is out of the way, he's able to dedicate all of the screen time to telling a story that's intricately plotted, thematically rich, and explores these characters, where Bruce Wayne is challenged on every front. A superhero story is only as strong as the villain and the threat that the superhero must overcome, and this movie gives us the Joker, this agent of chaos, and it's a performance that won him an Oscar. It's a movie that has actual stakes, where Batman fails and in the process loses the love of his life as well as one of his biggest allies. Christopher Nolan put together an incredibly well-crafted, taut crime thriller that happens to be a Batman story at the same time. And instead of taking influence from just other superhero movies, he pulled from the classic crime stories like Heat and delivered something unique that's exciting, it's emotional, it has everything that you want from a Batman story as well as everything you want from a great thriller in general. So it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, remember I've got more like it. You can check out my Batman reviews right over there. You can check out my Batman rankings right down there. And if you're looking for some clean energy without the sugar, check out Sneak Energy at that link down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.